Do you want to win a Reef goblet just like this one I made for a friend? Stay tuned, watch till the end, and I'll show you how to do it. Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Dustin from Revere Glass, and today I'm going to show you how to make a Reef goblet. I made this Reef goblet for a friend of mine because it's somebody who I really respect and I appreciate his friendship. And he asked me to make a goblet with an octopus, and he wanted it to be funky. So I thought maybe if I made a little section of the reef and put the octopus on, it would fit that perfectly. The other thing I want to let you know is that I'm having a studio equipment sale right now on the website. It's got a bunch of great stuff that was at Revere Glass. The original location was used by me for many years, and they're things that can be used and loved by you in your studio as well. So that's available now on the website. Just go to revereglass.com, check out the garage sale, and I would love to have one piece of my equipment live on in your studio. Make sure you stay to the end so you can see how to win this Reef goblet. I'm going to show you guys how I made it, and I'm also going to show you how to make a martini in it too. Anyway, Happy New Year. I hope you enjoy the video. Let's turn on the torch, let's get into the studio, and I'll show you how to do it. All right, you guys, welcome to the studio. I'm really excited to make this martini glass. It has a lot of different components. The first thing that we're going to make is an anemone. All right, so I'm using two different colors. I'm using one transparent yellow and one transparent green, and that way I can put these two things together and really make my creature look organic and fluid like the reef itself. Now I have my 7mm rod, and I'm going to pull that out into a stringer, and the stringer is probably about 1.5 to maybe 2 millimeters thick. Now I'm going to cut this into smaller pieces. Each one of these pieces is about 3/4 of an inch long. So I'm going to start with a 7mm clear rod. Then I'm going to attach the base of each of these rods together. I'm going to use my little torch to finesse and to clean up any marks in between. So here we go. I'm putting these all together. And I want to make sure that these are all sealed and nicely connected. What I'm doing right now is building a temporary bridge, and that bridge is going to hold these pieces together as I melt the bottom. I'm doing this to make sure that everything is connected and there won't be any cracks anywhere. If the glass is not melted in fully or melted together fully, it has a high potential to crack. I'm going to detach this anemone from the 7mm rod, and now I'm going to heat up the bottom of the anemone and melt it all together. And this way, all of the rods that I've attached are now fused together and they're one, so it has very little chance of cracking. Once I attach a 7mm rod to the base of the anemone, I'm going to remove the clear bridge that I had, and now everything is attached. There we go. So I'll remove any excess glass and make sure that each rod is separated. Now I'm using some pink glass, and I'm going to attach a little dot of pink glass on the edge of each rod, and this is going to make this look like a bubble tip anemone. And that's a really beautiful creature that has different colored tips and different color arms. So I'll attach a little bit of pink to each one. You see that it's been sped up a little bit so it's easier for you to understand. Now I'm going to melt each little pink dot with a small torch. The next thing that I'm going to make is the octopus. This is a really cool glass. It's kind of a opaque turquoise color. It's very, very cool to use. It doesn't work with a ton of other glasses, but if you make something small and solid of this glass, you should be fine. So I was really happy to have the opportunity to use this because it's one of my favorite colors, but I don't get to use it very often because it's not very compatible. Alright, so what I have here is I have a gather with another gather on the bottom, and then I flattened one gather. So a gather is a ball of glass. Now I'm using my scissors to cut that flattened gather into 8 sections. So you can see that I'm just making little sections with my scissors that are equally the same size. Once I have that all out and cut, I'm going to heat up each one of those individually and pull it and those are going to be the legs of the octopus. So I'm going back and forth with my flame to make sure that I apply an even heat. When you're working on such a small scale, it's important that your flame only touch the part of the glass that you want to move. If the flame is touching other parts of the glass, it will have the potential to move, and you'll distort your sculpture. Here I go, pulling the second leg, and now I'm just going to give it a little curve and make it have a little life to it. Now I'm going to make each of these legs a little different, and I'm going to go up with some of them and down with some of them. If you've made an octopus before, please tell me in the comments what your favorite technique is. Alright, so now I have this leg. On this leg, I'm going to bring it up and pull it back just a little bit. So you can see I almost have them all done. I have 2 left. We'll push that back in and make sure we get a really nice, fun curve on that. One of the beauties of glass is that you're able to capture time and fluidity in a moment. And you can freeze that piece as it's moving, and it's a beautiful material to mimic nature in that way. Okay, so now I'm going to attach a punty to the bottom here, and I'm going to stretch out the top and move the neck back into the shape that I want. There we go. And I'm just heating up the neck and then stretching it out a little bit. And now I'm going to remove the 7mm punty and go back in with a smaller punty. What I'm doing here is I'm gathering little pieces of broken glass called frit, and I'm collecting it on a 16mm rod of glass. These frits together will mimic the look of a rock from underwater. I'm just going to roll them in each one. Each time I roll this, it's just a little bit of frit, like a very small layer of glass. So I need to roll in it several times to make sure that I collect enough glass so that it looks opaque. This is one of the best ways to color a large area of glass quickly. Now I'm using my paddle to push this into shape, and then I have kind of the angles and the organic feel of nature. These angles will melt in a little bit and become much more smooth and fluid. Now I'm going to make sure to cover the other side with frit to make sure that it's completely covered in color. If you guys check out that torch mount, it's pretty cool. We're going to be covering that in the next video, so stay tuned for the review of the armadillo torch mount system from Mike Peterson. Here I go, I'm coating the whole thing a little bit more, and I'm going to leave it rough. So I want to leave a little bit bumpy and organic. So there you go, you can see the rock there, and it looks like a rock with sea life growing on it, which is exactly what I'm looking for. Okay, now I'm going to do this a few more times, and I might make some extra parts, because when you're making a piece with multiple components, it's important to build the components a little bit extra so that when you're putting it together, you can choose the best set of components. So I'll make a few more rocks with the same techniques, using the frit and rolling them in and creating a thin layer of glass each time I roll it, and then leaving the rock bumpy and rough at the end to mimic what an underwater rock would look like. Once I have 2 rocks together that look good, I'm going to fuse them together with my flame, and I'm just using the inner part of the flame. This is the lynx flame, and I'm putting those together, and now I'm going to remove the punty off the top rock, and this will become the stem and the main structural component of the martini glass. I'm going to use my small torch to heat up the rock and make sure that they're completely fused together. What I'm doing now is I'm coating a yellow rod with a transparent red glass. What I'm making right now is called a zoanthid. A zoanthid is a marine polyp that can grow by itself or in colonies, and it's a pretty interesting little creature. Within the tissue of the zoanthids, there is a microscopic photosynthetic algae, These algae can absorb sunlight and provide the zoanthid with essential nutrients through photosynthesis. In return, the zoanthid offers protection and stable environment for the algae to thrive. What I'm doing here is just flattening the end of each rod with the paddle and then clipping them off with my nippers. Once I have a few of the ones that I want, I'm going to grab them with my tweezers and start to build a colony. Zoanthids are both a colonial and single polyp animal. They can reproduce sexually or asexually. They're quite diverse and they're quite robust. So in this piece, we're going to use zoanthids in 2 places because they're so robust. Each polyp within its colony has its own individual tentacles and mouth, but they can share a common base. I'm going to put these together in the common base, and then I'll be able to attach this small colony of polyps to the reef. I'm going to switch the punty side for the anemone and then attach that to the reef. I want to make sure that I have a nice attachment point, so I'm going to put a little bit of clear in between the rocks and the anemone, and that's going to make sure that it has a really nice holding point. Now I'm going to go and adjust the arms and make it seem like it's fluid and moving in an upward direction. So I'm going to take each arm and move it just a little bit so that I can add the fluidity of nature. The next thing that I'm going to do is take this colony of zoanthids and attach that to the rock. I'm heating up the side of the rock and attaching them together. Again, I want to make sure that I have a little bit of clear on the base to make sure that the connection is nice and easy and smooth and will have very little chance of cracking in the future. I'm going to remove the punty and then I'll be able to move on to the next step. The next step is I'm going to attach the second colony of zoanthids to the uppermost rock. I'm going to do the same thing where I put a little bit of clear on the base, go in with my small flame and attach. I'm using my paddle just to clean that up a little bit. The next piece of the reef that I'm going to make is a soft coral. I really love soft corals when I'm scuba diving because of how fluid they are and they take the movement of the ocean. This one I'm using purple glass. I feel like the transparency of the purple glass along with the fluid shape really bring to life the idea of a soft coral. One of the most interesting things when I think of soft coral is how they have such fluidity in their movement and they really mimic what we would think of as a plant. But soft corals are actually animals, and some species also have a similar symbiotic relationship with the photosynthetic algae, which provides them with nutrients. And one of the other really cool things about soft coral is that they can react with their polyps very fast, like for protection or eating. Super cool stuff. And I'm using purple transparent glass to mimic what my imagination thinks of as a soft coral. I'm going to be putting these pieces together by attaching the ends and then melting them in, making sure that each piece is really well connected. And I'll go in with my mini torch to make sure that the seal is really clean. I'm attaching a few more pieces. I want to make sure I really fill out the space and bring the soft coral to life. What I'm doing right now is attaching a small punty to the end, and that will hold the piece in the kiln while I work on more components for the goblet. I'm leaving a little bit of clear glass on the end to make sure that I have a nice attachment point. The next piece of coral that I'm making is a sponge coral, a tube sponge coral. And what I'm going to do here is create a blowout with 2 layers. The inner layer is going to have orange to mimic some of the yellow tube sponges in nature. One of the things I really love about the tube sponge, besides the fact that it has some pharmaceutical applications showing all the amazing things that can exist in nature, but they also are a really beautiful array of colors, and they're filter feeders. So they use these large tubes to filter the plankton and to filter the water so that they can get their food. I'm taking the glass and rolling it on the marver using a blow tube. On the outside, I have the purple. On the outside, I have a transparent amber and purple glass. After I've coated the orange glass in the amber and purple colored glass, I'm going to melt that in entirely and make sure it's smooth. I'll blow a little bit more air into it. Hanging it down to utilize gravity to stretch it out just a little bit will help in this process. Now I'm heating it up again and rolling it on my marver. All right. Once I have that in the shape that I want, which is kind of like a cylinder, I'm going to use a small glass rod to pull off any extra glass to make the wall thin so that I can make the hole. Once I have the hole made, I'm going to attach a 12mm blow tube and make sure to remove the glass from the metal blow tube as fast as I can so it won't crack. Once I have that removed, I'll stretch out the tube to make it much longer. Once I have the tube thinner and longer, I'm cutting the tube into smaller pieces because I want to put 3 pieces together to make the sponge. I'm using one blade of the jacks to open up the tube sponge and make it really mimic some of the tube sponges that exist in nature. I'm using my jacks to open up the second part of the tube sponge. Here we go. Now the diamond shears will denote where I'm going to separate these 2 pieces. I'm going to attach them together using a series of different kinds of punties and holders. Right now I have the 7mm rod holding the backside of the sponge. Now I'm attaching one tube to the other to start to form the structure of the sponge. I'm attaching the last one, and once I attach this third one, I'll be able to finalize the shape. When you're attaching these, you want to make sure that they are hot and sealed, and so if you need to go in with a mini torch and smooth out any connection, you may want to use your mini torch to go inside close to all the seals to make the connection really nice. I'm using my torch and some graphite to give these tube sponges an organic shape and feel. I'm using my graphite and torch to give these an organic feel. I'm hopping over to my lathe for a second, and now I'm going to prepare the martini glass shape. This is medium wall tubing, and I'm using a pretty light and bushy flame to make sure that I don't overheat the glass. As I heat the glass, I'm using the torch and the gravity and the paddle to start to shape this into a martini glass shape. Now I'm using my torch to do a flame cut, and I'm heating up the glass and pulling back on the lathe and making the glass thinner and thinner, and this allows me to tear the glass apart, and now I have 2 separate pieces. I'm heating up the lip and using the paddle to just make this nice and flat and remove any excess glass or bumps that were in there. I'm heating up the lip to bring this all the way out flat to make sure that I can continue the line from the base of the glass. Because there's a little indent, I have to heat that up very carefully. I have to flare this open with the rod and make sure I can push out that divot and bring this cup all the way to a nice, even shape. Now I'm going to prepare the foot. I'm going to attach a 10mm rod to the same medium wall tubing. I'll blow up the foot and make a bubble and condense that bubble to make it more squat, more collapsed. So I'm using my flame to heat up the glass, and I'm pushing it together with the lathe just a little bit at a time to squish it down. Once I have it all squished, I'm going to do another similar flame cut. So I'll heat up the glass really hot, and I'll use the lathe to pull it apart, and as it gets thinner and thinner, I'm going to be able to just really pop that bubble and create a nice foot. I'm really excited to get to try the Inkwalla out. It's a tool made by Mike Peterson, and I've been getting more and more comfortable using it as it's been in my studio. It's pretty cool, and this is definitely fun to flare feet on. So I'm putting the glass in the inquala and I'm using my torch mount to aim into the glass. As I'm spinning it around, I'm using the paddle and the heat and the centrifugal force to help me get it into the proper shape. I'm going to use the egg flaring tool designed by master glassblower Robert Mickelson. You should check out his YouTube channel. He's an amazing artist, and this is one of the tools that he brought to the marketplace through Taglia Tool, which again is an amazing company. I'm using the inquala to turn the glass, and now I'm grabbing the egg flaring tool to open this up and really pull that open. And this is one of the funnest techniques. I love to do this, you guys, and doing it this way was just so much fun. Putting the egg tool close to the center and then using that smooth graphite and the flame just to flare that open to a nice even foot. All right, then you can use your paddle to make sure it's nice and flat, and we'll be able to start constructing the goblet. If you have a holding tool, you can use it to hold your goblet as you put it together. If you have a lathe, you're welcome to use that too. Or you can just do all of this by hand, which is absolutely acceptable as well. I'm using my Bunsen burner to heat this up and connect everything together. Once I have the reef connected to the top of the martini glass, I will be able to attach the foot. It's important that each of these connections have a really nice and strong seal so that when the goblet is being used, it will still be functional. Now I'm attaching the soft coral to the bottom of the reef. I want to make sure this has a nice, good connection so that it's stable. I'm using my mini torch to go to the seal and make sure that that's a very smooth transition and line between each component. Like I've done with some of the other pieces in this goblet, I'm using a little piece of clear to attach to the octopus, which will help stick it to the reef. I'm going to heat up the reef, attach the octopus, and then I'll be able to attach the octopus in a few more places. Using the mini torch is a really good way to get into tight places so that you can attach small components in a very small area. As you have the glass out of the kiln for a longer period of time, you may want to use a Bunsen burner. This flex burner from Mad Hatter is an amazing tool, and I really love using it to keep my glass warm while it's outside of the kiln. The last component that I'm attaching is the tube sponge, and I'm going to attach this at the very top and break past the threshold of where the cup and the reef meet, and that's going to really bring some movement into the piece. It's going to let the viewer's eye move from top to bottom without getting stuck in the center part of the reef. Here's the goblet. I'm going to put that in the kiln, and I'm going to make a goblet like this for one of you guys. Just comment in the video and I'll make one for you. I'll see you guys in the kitchen where I'll share my recipe with you on how to make a dirty martini. The first step is to grab 60 milliliters of gin or vodka. The next ingredient is dry vermouth. Use 30 milliliters of dry vermouth. To make the martini dirty, you need 30 milliliters of olive brine. Throw some ice into your shaker and give that a nice shake to make sure that the drink is chilled. Pop that open, put on your strainer, and pour that into a Reef Martini glass. Next, drop in a couple of pimento olives. Finally, enjoy a dirty martini. Happy New Year, you guys. I'll see you next year. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the dirty martini. Here's some close-ups of the goblet and the octopus with the reef. It's the bubble coral, the reef rocks, and the zoanthids all together with the dirty martini, bringing this piece to completion, and is beautiful. I really enjoyed making this project because it was complex with all the different components, and the sculpting, the blowing of the martini shape, and trying to make something that mimicked nature is always challenging and fun. So I really loved making this, and I hope my friend loves it too. hashtag Revere Glass or at Revere Glass so that you can show us what you've done with some of the ideas that I shared with you here today. If you want to win a reef goblet just like this, all you have to do is like and subscribe, of course, comment on the video, and share the video. If you're curious who won this bench pin from Alan Revere, it's Carol Money 4971. Here's your bench pin. Go to the website, fill out the chat, let us know that you're Carol Money, and we'll ship this right out to you. RevereGlass.com. The chat's in the bottom right corner of every page.